Theo hated moons, especially the kind that moved like they were trying to win a synchronized swimming competition. Varela had 5 of them. 5. They glittered and spun across a lavender sky, casting reflections over still lakes that shimmered like broken glass. Beautiful? Sure. But after 3 weeks stationed here, all Theo had earned was a mild headache, a sunburn in places that shouldn't be sunburned, and a whole new appreciation for Earth's one humble moon. He wasn't here for the views anyway. He was a soldier. Technically. More precisely, a diplomatic attaché from Earth, assigned to the Human-Verthellan Alliance exchange program. His job mostly involved standing very still in ceremonial armor that itched in weird places, avoiding eye contact with alien nobles who looked like intergalactic models, and pretending not to hear questions like, "Chew, do humans actually have bones?" "Yes," he'd once muttered, "and feelings too, believe it or not." This morning, like most, found him loitering near the royal compound's southern gardens. He had a half-crushed nutrition bar in one hand and absolutely no intention of being useful. The air smelled faintly like sun-warmed lavender. Birds, if you could call glowing 6-winged jelly orbs, birds, drifted overhead. Alien nobles passed by in robes that shifted color like oil slicks. Everything was beautiful, expensive, calm, and Theo wanted to scream. He bit into the nutrition bar. It tasted like recycled cardboard with ambition. Then, the world changed. There was no warning, no dramatic lead-up. 1 second the air was heavy with perfumed serenity, and the next it folded inward with a sound that wasn't sound at all. Like the atmosphere had hiccuped. Whoomp! The shockwave hit a second later, toppling sculptures and shredding fountains into shards of crystal death. Theo barely had time to drop the bar before instinct yanked him to the ground. A hedge tackled his side, then tried to sting him. "Hostile shrubbery," he muttered. Noted. A second explosion tore through the western wing, closer, sharper. Alarms shrieked, guards scrambled, and through the intercom, a voice barked in 3 different languages. "Evacuate!" Theo pushed to his feet, ears ringing. All around him, order crumbled. A royal barge had crashed into the courtyard, its golden fins curled like burnt leaves. Smoke billowed from the shattered towers. Somewhere far above, a spire collapsed with a groan that echoed through bone. He should have run the other way. Instead, movement caught his eye. A flash of pale blue, just beyond a collapsed arch near the old library wing. A child, running. No, not running. Stumbling. Theo didn't think. His feet were already moving. The marble halls of the palace, usually humming with soft lights and ambient music, now sparked and fizzled like a dying amusement park. Doorways hung crooked. Smoke snaked along the ceilings. One corridor reeked of burnt almonds. Plasma leak. Great. Death with a dessert finish. Then he heard it. A hiccup. Tiny. Wet. Unmistakably a child's. He followed the sound, ducking past shattered tiles and flickering doors until a storage room opened to his left. Inside, huddled behind a cracked crate, was a small, alien girl. She had moon-pale skin, long, glassy ears, eyes like tiny violet stars, wide and terrified. She clutched a half-burned plush with 3 heads and too many legs. For a moment, neither moved. Then, with royal-level offense, she hurled the toy at his face and shrieked. Theo caught it mid-air. "Okay," he breathed, starting off strong. Then she bolted, and without thinking, because thinking had clearly abandoned him hours ago, Theo ran after her. Theo sprinted down the smoke-stained hallway, feet slipping on shattered tiles, heart pounding louder than the alarms. The little alien girl moved fast, faster than any terrified kid in a tattered dress had a right to. She ducked past a fallen beam, nearly face-planted into a stairwell, then bolted down a corridor like a violet-eyed comet. "Slow down!" Theo shouted, because that always worked on panicked children. She responded with a shriek and a hard left turn into a dim side passage. Theo cursed under his breath and followed, leaping over debris, dodging a crying maintenance bot, probably, and nearly sliding into a wall when the floor tilted from another structural tremor. The palace was unraveling. Fast. He caught her just as she tripped over a coil of dangling cables. They both went down hard. Theo grunted as she twisted in his grip and bit him. "Ow! Okay." Yes, you've got teeth. Good job, evolution, he yelped. She wriggled like a wild animal, hissing something in a language he didn't understand, kicking his chest plate with surprising strength. But Theo didn't let go. He'd once wrestled a plasma-feral sewer rat on Mars Outpost 12. He could handle a space princess having a meltdown. Then, without warning, she went limp. Theo froze. Her breathing was steady. Her tiny body slumped against his armor. The glow in her violet eyes dimmed into unconsciousness. Oh, he exhaled. Self shut down. Not a bad strategy. He cradled her gently, one arm under her knees, the other around her back. Her silver blue hair was matted with soot. A torn sash still clung to her shoulder, its embroidery glinting faintly. Royal symbols. And in her small, soot-stained hand, she still clutched that half-burned plushie with too many legs. Theo recognized her now. He'd seen her once, weeks ago, seated beside Queen Valmyra at a ceremonial banquet. Tiny, solemn, with a circlet of star-shard crystals resting on her head. And now she had drooled on his shirt. Well, he muttered, I'm probably violating about 50 interstellar diplomatic protocols right now. A crack split the ceiling above him. Make that 60. He adjusted his grip and stood. The palace groaned around him. Somewhere a tower collapsed with a sound like an exhausted dragon exhaling. Theo didn't look back. He ran. They ducked through a narrow access corridor. The lights flickered. Somewhere a panel sparked violently. Theo muttered a few Earth-grade curses. In his arms, the girl stirred. You awake? He asked softly. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked up at him, groggy and bleary, then frowned. You smell like burnt toast, she rasped. Theo blinked. Yeah, that's probably the palace on fire. She considered this, nodded solemnly. I don't like hugging, she said. He chuckled. Duly noted. Unfortunately, I'm currently your only functioning escape vehicle, so we'll both just have to suffer. She didn't argue. Instead, after a beat, she rested her forehead against his collarbone and closed her eyes again. They turned a corner and passed a cracked info terminal. It chirped weakly as they walked by. Reminder, guests are encouraged to explore the Royal Historical Atrium. Theo kicked it. It fizzled into silence. He reached the auxiliary launch bay, miraculously still intact. Emergency shuttles lined the walls like beetles sleeping in formation. He ran to the nearest, slapped the entry pad. It blinked red. He slapped it again. Still red. Come on. Don't make me flirt with you, Theo hissed. I will serenade your interface. Beep. Green light. Welcome aboard. Yeah, that's what I thought. The hatch hissed open. He ducked inside, laid the girl down on a padded bench, her hands still curled around the limp plushie. She was asleep again, mouth slightly open, one hand clenched in his jacket, like letting go wasn't an option anymore. Theo sat back, stared at the console. Great, he whispered. I'm now the official babysitter of the heir to an alien empire. Outside, the royal palace continued to burn. Inside, the future of a kingdom snored gently in his lap. The shuttle broke atmosphere with a wheeze and a shudder, the engines coughing like an asthmatic dragon before stabilizing into a steady hum. Theo slumped into the pilot's seat, muscles screaming, suit scorched, arms sore from carrying a very judgmental 6-year-old alien, who had, to his surprise, decided to nap mid-escape. The nav console blinked softly. A destination pinged on the edge of the star map. Horizon Arc 5, a neutral orbital medical platform, human-built, human-run, currently floating like a lopsided tin can above one of Varella's minor moons. Not fancy, not exploding. Good enough, Theo muttered and punched in the course. The girl, still curled on the bench like a soot-streaked space kitten, let out a soft snore. Only then did the weight hit him. He'd saved her, not just a child. The heir to Queen Valmyra, the diplomatic, economic, and possibly military future of an entire alien empire, was currently cuddling a half-burnt stuffed toy and drooling on his emergency blanket. Yup, he muttered. Definitely gonna need therapy after this. The shuttle coasted into approach. Horizon Arc 5 came into view, blocky, gray, and slightly dented, in places no one liked to talk about. Its docking rings rotated lazily, and someone had spray-painted, "We probably won't explode," under the station's nameplate. Theo smiled despite himself. Finally, something that speaks my language. Inside the docking bay, a tired-looking technician with neon green gum and a half-zipped jumpsuit stared as the shuttle doors opened. Then, stared harder. Sir," the tech said slowly. "Is that a—" "Yes," Theo cut in, stepping out with the girl in his arms. "Yes, she's a princess. No, you can't pet her. Yes, I need a secure medbay and diplomatic clearance like yesterday." The girl blinked awake at the sound of voices. She glanced around, confused, then declared, "I'm hungry and he smells like fire." "Still with the roast, huh?" Theo muttered. She nodded. "I also want toast." Noted, adding that to the intergalactic incident report. Within 20 minutes, they had a private med bay, a confused nurse, and a tray of bread Theo may or may not have stolen from the staff lounge toaster. The girl, who still refused to give her name, sat wrapped in a blanket with her feet poking out, inspecting her toast like it might explode. "It's crunchy," she announced after the first bite. "That's called overcooked. A human delicacy." She frowned. "Why does it smell like burnt sadness?" Theo chuckled. "That's how you know it's working." She didn't smile, but she didn't frown either. That felt like progress. As the medical bots finished their scans, no internal injuries, mild shock, diet critically lacking in minerals, Theo finally let himself breathe. She was safe. He was mostly in one piece, and for the first time in hours, nobody was screaming or biting. The girl leaned sideways on the bench, slowly resting her head against his arm. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Are you going to leave now?" Theo blinked. "No," he said softly. "Not unless you want me to." She was quiet. Then, "Good." And just like that, without ceremony, without orders, an alliance began. Not written in treaties, but in toast, tired sighs, and a soldier who sat still for the first time. Because someone small had decided to trust him, the medbay had gone quiet. Theo sat on the edge of the diagnostics table, sipping lukewarm tea from a cup that claimed to be self-heating but lied. His jacket lay draped over a stool, scorched and still faintly smelling of space smoke. Beside him, LRA, still wrapped in her blanket, was examining a stethoscope like it might bite her. "Is this for listening to internal sadness?" she asked solemnly. Theo blinked. "Technically hearts, but sure, same vibe." She nodded and placed the earpieces in with surprising precision, then pressed the bell to her own chest. A moment passed. "Mine's still working," she declared. "Glad to hear it." She glanced up at him, something uncertain flickering behind her glowing eyes. "You didn't leave," she said, not a question, just quiet observation. "Nope." "You could have." Theo shrugged. "Could have also stayed in the garden eating bad granola bars while everything exploded. But here we are." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. She looked away. "I've seen people leave before. They always say they won't." Theo didn't respond immediately. There were entire libraries of pain tucked behind that sentence, and none of them belonged to someone her age. Instead, he said, "Well, if I ever say I'm leaving, I'll give you toast first. That way, you'll know I mean it." She considered this seriously. "That's fair." Later, after the medbots buzzed away and the worst of the soot had been wiped off her cheeks, she asked the question, "What's Earth like?" Theo leaned back, exhaled through his nose. "Loud, messy, kind of smells like wet dog in the spring." She blinked. "That's awful." "Yeah," he grinned. "It's great." He told her about oceans, real ones, not artificially colored palace lakes, about trees so tall they scraped clouds, bugs that glowed for no reason, and cities that never slept. She listened with her knees tucked under her chin, head tilted, mouth slightly open. "Do your people really wear socks?" "Religiously." "That's strange." "You're not wrong." In turn, she told him about Varellan sky rites, dancing lights made from memory threads and wind songs, about fruit that sang when bitten, about her mother's hair, braided with shimmering strands of encoded history. She lets the royal archivists braid it in when something important happens, LRA explained. It's a way to remember. Theo looked at her silver blonde strands, already starting to frizz again after being cleaned. Think they'll braid me in? She gave him a long, appraising look. Maybe. If you do something really important. He arched a brow. Saving you from an exploding palace didn't count? She tilted her head. That was just step one. They sat in comfortable silence after that. Theo on one end of the bench. LRA curled on the other, humming quietly. At one point, she slid closer. He didn't comment. She didn't explain. The door hissed open. Commander Reyes stepped in, middle-aged, under-caffeinated, and permanently skeptical. Sergeant Merrick, he greeted. Heard you smuggled a royal child into my station during an unsanctioned planetary escape. Theo sipped his tea. Technically, I commandeered the child. She bit me. It was mutual. Reyes sighed, the sigh of a man who'd once stopped a diplomatic incident with 3 crackers and a fake allergy. I'm going to need a full report. I figured. And she's still royalty, still hungry. LRA lifted a hand without looking up. More toast, please. Reyes blinked. Is she serious? Theo didn't skip a beat. Deadly. That night, Theo found her curled up on the diagnostics bench again, wrapped in a fresh blanket someone had embroidered with a tiny crown. He sat beside her without a word. After a moment, she spoke. My name's LRA. He smiled. Theo. A pause. You already knew, didn't you? About you? Yeah. Took me a while, though. She yawned. You're not very good at bowing. Nope. I'm not very good at ruling. He looked down at her. You don't have to be good at it yet. I know, she mumbled, drifting off. That's why I need you to stay. Theo didn't answer. But he stayed. The Queen's arrival was anything but subtle. Horizon Arc 5 was built for patching up wounded soldiers and fixing broken satellites, not hosting alien royalty. So when Queen Valmyra's obsidian vessel drifted into docking bay, 3 like a falling star wrapped in silence and power, the entire station froze. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Tools dropped. Even the vending machine stopped humming, as if realizing it wasn't worthy. Theo stood near the edge of the bay, arms folded. Beside him, LRA swung her legs from a high bench, clutching a lollipop a confused nurse had declared medically stabilizing. You nervous? Theo asked, not looking at her. Nope, she replied. Are you? He exhaled. Very. The Queen stepped through the airlock and time seemed to slow. Tall, regal, clad in ceremonial armor etched with flowing runes. Her long silver ears rose like blades, and her violet eyes missed nothing. No guards flanked her. She didn't need them. Her presence bent the air. Theo straightened up, tried to remember how to breathe. You are the human who removed my daughter from Varela, she said. No emotion, just cold fact. Theo opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Technically, she bit me, so I guess she removed herself. With assistance. A pause. Then Valmyra knelt, gracefully, impossibly, and extended her hand toward LRA. The girl didn't move. No, LRA said, pointing. You're scary. He's funny. Theo blinked. I'll take that as a win. The Queen rose slowly. Her gaze shifted to Theo. You have earned an audience. Walk with me. Do I get a sash or something? You get to live. Fair. They walked in silence through the station's curved corridors. LRA held Theo's hand as if she'd always done it. Valmyra didn't comment. In the observation lounge, the Queen finally stopped. Through the glass, the fractured moon glowed in bioluminescent rivers. When the palace fell, she said, voice softer now, I believed my daughter lost. Theo stayed quiet. My guards failed. My advisors vanished. But a foreign soldier carried her through fire. She was scared, he said. Alone. Good aim with a stuffed toy. Valmyra's lips almost curved. You could have left her. I didn't. You didn't. She stepped forward, then, unexpectedly, reached out. 2 fingers brushing Theo's temple, a pulse of warmth. For a moment, their memories entwined. Fear, smoke, laughter in a medbay. LRA's voice, her trust. Valmyra withdrew, her expression unreadable. "You are known to me now," she said. Theo staggered slightly. That's either comforting or terrifying. Behind them, LRA piped up. "Can we go somewhere with pillows now?" Valmyra lifted her gently. "Yes, and toast." Theo grinned. "We'll forge an interstellar alliance out of carbs yet." The hydroponics lab wasn't the most dignified place for an interspecies diplomatic summit, but it was the only room on Horizon Arc 5 that didn't smell like burnt circuitry or regret. And it had cucumbers. Lots of cucumbers. Theo sat on an overturned crate labeled Property of Laundry Unit B12, watching LRA skip between rows of misted lettuce towers. She wore a lab coat 5 sizes too big, sleeves dragging behind her like she was a wizard in training. "I'm a scientist now," she declared, to no one in particular. "You've been here 2 hours." "I've made 3 discoveries," she replied. 1. Moss is squishy. 2. Cucumbers are suspicious. 3. If you press this button, don't press it. She didn't press it. Queen Valmyra, somehow regal even while perched on a folding chair beside a tomato vine, sipped a steaming cup of something that looked and smelled like liquefied moonlight. Theo cleared his throat. "So, this is happening." Valmyra looked at him with eyes that had seen wars, coronations, and the birth of stars. "Indeed. You're very calm. I am very practiced." They sat in silence. Then LRA bounded over, holding 2 nutrient pellets like sacred relics. "I present my royal snack prototypes," she said grandly. "This one is called Sweet Crunch Alpha, and this one is still sticky." Theo took the sticky one without hesitation. "Your Highness, you honor me." Valmyra raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He bit into it. It tasted like if sugar and chalk had a misunderstanding. He chewed anyway. LRA watched him with the intense focus of a small god judging her first worshipper. "It's perfect," he said, coughing slightly. "We'll change galactic cuisine forever." She beamed. Valmyra, for the first time since landing, allowed herself a small smile. After LRA fell asleep, curled up in a hammock made of diagnostic tubing, Valmyra remained. Theo stood nearby, unsure whether to stay or leave. He opted for standing, which felt safer than moving. "She talks about you," Valmyra said suddenly. Theo blinked. "She talks a lot. She talks about you differently." He wasn't sure how to answer that. "She's still young," the Queen continued. "Still grieving her father. Still learning how to be both girl and heir." Theo nodded. "She's tough. Smarter than me." Valmyra glanced at him. "You joke often. Is it armor or instinct?" "Both," he admitted. "But lately, less armor. More instinct." A long pause. "She needs someone who makes her feel safe," Valmyra said quietly. "Not just protected. Safe. There's a difference." "I know. You make her laugh." Theo looked at the Queen, startled. "That matters? In this galaxy?" Valmyra said, standing. "Laughter is rare. The ones who create it should be kept close." She turned, brushing past him, then paused. "Have you considered staying?" Theo blinked. "On the station?" "On her path." She didn't wait for a reply. Later that night, Theo sat alone in the observatory lounge. LRA had been tucked into a borrowed bunk, one hand still clutching a half-melted toy, the other wrapped around his old jacket like it was made of starlight. Outside the window, the stars blinked. Inside, for the first time in years, Theo felt still, not drifting, not forgotten, just here. The door slid open. Valmyra stepped inside. This time, no armor, no titles, just a mother. "She asked if you'd be there when she wakes," she said, simply. Theo looked down at his hands. "I didn't expect this, nor did I." Another pause. "I've never had a place," Theo admitted. "Never wanted one. Too many expectations. Too many ways to fail. And now? I think, I'd like to try." Valmyra stepped closer. Her voice was softer now. Then stay. Not because duty demands it, but because someone small needs you. Theo met her eyes, and in them, for the first time, he saw not a queen, but a woman trying to rebuild something precious. I will. He returned to LRA's room, sat beside her, and when her eyes cracked open, heavy with sleep, she mumbled, "You came back. I told you I would." She reached for his hand, held it tightly, then whispered, "You're not bad at hugging. Just so you know." He chuckled. "Neither are you." It started with a squeaky drawer and a curious child. LRA, despite having been told repeatedly not to touch anything in the archive annex, had done exactly that. Theo walked in half a second before the lights flickered, a console beeped, and a holographic interface flared to life. Dusty, blue, and definitely ancient. That wasn't me," LRA said, standing very still with both hands behind her back. Theo squinted at the terminal. "What did you touch?" "I was investigating." "You mean snooping?" "Scientific snooping." He stepped closer. The console pulsed. Its interface wasn't human, nor Verithellan. The symbols shifted midair, rearranging themselves slowly, as if waking from a long sleep. Theo glanced back at her. "Do you recognize this?" LRA shook her head. "No, but it feels familiar, like a song I forgot I used to hum." The console beeped again, this time deeper, more deliberate. Then, without warning, it projected an image. A star map. 3-dimensional. Alive. Theo took a step back. "Well, okay, that's new." Lines arced between systems. Markers glowed at irregular intervals. Some blinked. Some pulsed in sync with LRA's proximity. She reached toward it, and the entire interface shifted. Symbols reoriented, pathways aligned. Theo's breath caught. "It's reacting to you." LRA didn't move. "It knows me?" "No," Theo murmured. "It remembers you." They stared at the map. Theo didn't understand half of it. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just ancient data. It was navigation. And buried within that data was a frequency, an emergency beacon locked to Verithellan royal DNA. "Your mother doesn't know this is here," he said softly. LRA nodded. "I think it was left for her. Or for whoever came after. You unlocked it. She didn't." Theo's mind raced. If this beacon could transmit through the diplomatic relays, it might bypass Varella's blockade. It might prove she survived, that the bloodline was intact, that hope still existed. He looked at her. She looked calm, not just brave, centered, like the stars were no longer strangers. "You realize what this means?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm not just a passenger anymore." He stepped forward and began downloading the data into a secure core. The hologram shimmered, pulsing gently in sync with LRA's breathing. Behind him, she said, "If we send this, they'll come." Theo paused. "Good they or bad they?" LRA's voice was soft. "Both." The signal went out 12 minutes after activation. A tight beam transmission, encrypted at a level few modern systems could even read, let alone trace. It shot through subspace like a whispered memory, bouncing across dead satellites and dormant relays until it reached somewhere it hadn't been meant to. Somewhere listening. Theo watched the core finish its upload, the console dimming as if exhaling. Beside him, LRA's expression had shifted. Not afraid, not quite, but tighter, more focused. "Did we do the right thing?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "I think we did the necessary thing," she said, finally, "even if it wasn't the safest." Theo rubbed the back of his neck. "Those are my least favorite kind of things." A soft ping came from the far wall. A holo terminal blinked to life, displaying unauthorized response activity. Theo's stomach dropped. "That's fast." LRA walked up beside him. "It's not Varellan." He tapped the console. "It's not human either." The transmission pulsed again. Coordinates, a proximity scan. Someone, or something, was coming. Fast. In the war room, Valmira stood stiff as stone, flanked by 2 diplomatic officers and a nurse still holding a piece of toast. Theo explained everything, quick, clear, skipping nothing. When he finished, the room was dead silent. The Queen spoke first. You awoke a beacon keyed to royal blood. Yes, ma'am. And broadcast it without consulting command. Correct. And you did this why? Theo looked at LRA. She stood beside him, small, calm, but unshakable. Because she believed it was right, he said. And I believed her. Valmira's gaze lingered on him, then on her daughter. Her posture softened, slightly. There are enemies who waited for a signal like this, she said, longer than your species has counted time. LRA stepped forward. Then let them come. Theo blinked. I'd like to officially request a Plan B. LRA reached for his hand. I'm not scared, she said quietly. He squeezed her fingers. I am, he admitted. But I'm staying anyway. Valmira exhaled. Then, so will I. The silence that followed wasn't fear. It was resolve. They came without ceremony. No grand battleship, no blaring alarms, just a shift in the sky. At first, the stars near Horizon Arc 5 simply blinked, as if someone was turning them off one by one. Then came the gravity hum, a wrongness, subtle but undeniable, that made crew members drop tools and look up with primal dread. Theo was in the hangar when the first shadow fell across the bay window. A ship. No, not a ship. A shape. Angular. Shifting. Alive in ways machines shouldn't be. It hovered, silent and black, like a god holding its breath. The station lights flickered. Valmira was already there, flanked by guards summoned hastily from the Queen's retinue. Her expression was unreadable, but her voice cut through the tension like steel through silk. Seal all decks, activate non-aggression fields, and get me my daughter. Theo was already moving. LRA didn't scream when the alarms began. She just looked at Theo with those quiet violet eyes and said, They found us. He nodded. Let's make sure they regret it. He scooped her up, not because she couldn't run, but because it would be faster. The station corridors echoed with warnings in 6 languages, evacuation lights casting the walls in pulsing red. As they reached the inner defense ring, a technician barked, You're not cleared here! I brought the princess, Theo said. The doors hissed open. Cleared. The invaders didn't board like raiders or diplomats. They simply appeared, through walls, between dimensions. Figures in liquid armor that flickered with distortion, their limbs too long, their motions too smooth. Not soldiers, predators shaped like men. Theo stepped in front of LRA. One of the creatures tilted its head at him, curious. Return the air, it said in perfect standard. We will erase only the rest. LRA clutched Theo's sleeve. He squared his shoulders. You want her? Come through me. The creature blinked, once, then lunged. The next minute was chaos and light. Theo moved like instinct had replaced thought. His ceremonial armor offered no protection, but he didn't care. He tackled the thing mid-charge, felt its form ripple unnaturally beneath his grip. They slammed into a wall. It hissed, not pain, amusement. It reached for his throat. Then LRA screamed, not out of fear, but command. Her voice cracked through the air like thunder wrapped in starlight. The creature froze, its limbs trembled, and then it vanished, disintegrated, like it had never been real. Theo slumped, breathing hard. Okay, that's new. LRA helped him up. You're bleeding. Just a little. Mostly pride? She smiled, shaky but real. We can't let them reach Mom. We won't. The battle didn't last long, not because it was easy, but because something changed. When LRA screamed, something ancient had responded. The beacon, the bloodline, hadn't just called enemies. It had called defenders. From the far reaches of Varellan space, older factions long thought lost flickered back into the network. Dormant AIs awoke. Defensive protocols buried for centuries rose like ghosts in the machine. And through it all, Theo didn't leave LRA's side. By the end of the hour, the attackers were gone. The station, singed and cracked, still held together. In the medical bay, Theo sat with his jacket wrapped around LRA, who now slept like she hadn't just screamed apart reality. Valmyra entered quietly. She looked at her daughter, then at Theo. "You were not born of my people," she said softly. "But today, you stood like one of our first guardians." Theo tried to smile. Just did what needed doing. She stepped forward, kneeling before him, not as a queen, but as a mother. "You have earned not just our gratitude, but our name." He blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, "you are no longer a guest." The stars looked different that day. Maybe it was the calm after everything, the silence left in the wake of chaos. Maybe it was just the clarity that came from almost losing everything. Theo stood once more in Horizon Arc 5's observation deck, hands in his pockets, eyes on the void. Behind him, life had resumed. Crews patching walls, engineers cursing politely. A new security protocol named after a girl who had once bitten him in fear and now hugged him in habit. He smiled at the thought. "Thinking about running?" a voice asked softly. Valmyra. She had traded her armor again for something simpler. Robes dyed in nebula hues, her ears relaxed, her posture less like a queen and more like someone just being. Beside her, LRA bounced on her heels, now wearing goggles, one shoe, and a badge that read Junior Toast Scientist. Theo raised an eyebrow. Not running, just figuring out what staying looks like. Valmyra stepped beside him, silent for a beat. Then she spoke, softly, sincerely. "Do you know what we call those who show up when no one else does? Who carry no flag, no title, but change everything?" Theo shook his head. "We call them bridges," she said, "between worlds, between fears, between what was and what can be." He glanced at her. "So, I'm a bridge now?" "You were always one," she said. "We just hadn't noticed." LRA tugged his sleeve. "If you stay, can we invent new snacks every week?" He grinned. "Only if I get naming rights." Deal. A week later, Theo signed the papers. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just ink, a name, and a new beginning. Ambassador Guardian Theo Merrick, Earth representative to Varithella, and unofficial royal toast taster. He moved into the quarters next to the medical bay, because LRA insisted that important people need to be near Band-Aids and snacks. The station adapted. So did Theo. Some nights, he and Valmyra walked the halls without speaking, sharing silence like it meant something. Sometimes it did. There were politics, reports, meetings that felt like slow suffocation. But there was also laughter, messy breakfasts, and a little girl who now called him my human, with the pride of a monarch. He still didn't like hugging, but some nights, when the ship was quiet and the stars hummed beyond the hull, he would feel a tiny weight curl up beside him, not out of fear, but trust, and he'd stay awake a little longer, just to make sure the stars kept singing, just to be there, in case she needed toast, because home wasn't Earth anymore. Home was wherever they waited for him.